Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry about that. Yeah, trying to do too many things at once. Yeah, I'm trying to pat my head and rub my belly at the same time. Yes, welcome everybody. It is Thursday. It is 9, so of course that means it's UK Cowboys time. How we doing, Mr. Lawn? How are we doing?
Oh, doing good, doing good. It's been a busy week so far.
Yeah.
March is season here in Linlithgow, so
Yeah.
um, lots of activities. So
Yeah, it's all going on. Like you're starting to pick up pace now. I like that. It's the picking up pace period now.
yep,
So yeah, it's all fun and games. We'll get into a little bit of the OTAs and the practice in a minute. I'll get your opinion and everybody at home as well. We'll get your opinions. Paul was supposed to join us, but he's had to vacate. So never mind on that one. But we're going to be looking today at we're going to be looking at the wide receiver position as we're going through all the breakdown series at the moment. Are we cooking? Big question. Yeah. But we'll start off first of all with OTAs. I'm just going to ask you, and I'll ask everyone at home as well. What has it been so far for you, Lorne, that's been the biggest standout of OTAs?
um, initially, there was question marks obviously about this offense, and it didn't seem to be working. But in the last couple of days, it seems to have come on strong, and you're seeing Dak hitting his peak as well, and hopefully can carry this into training camp as well. Obviously, you normally expect that defense sort of hits the ground running first of all because
Yeah.
it's more a case of disruption of the
You're just
pre-programmed.
reacting.
So
Yeah.
but it's good to see that Dak's now getting on pace with just about everybody from all accounts. He's Jalen Tolbert's coming up with some catches.
There you
Jalen Burke's
go.
coming up with catches. Simi Fajoko's coming up with catches, and then you're hitting nice 60-yard bombs to Brandon Cooks outrunning the double coverage as well.
There it is. Yeah, that was the one. That was the one I was looking at. Brandon Cooks. Very interesting to see what's going on there. Exciting too. You attested as well, Tolbert, and things going on with the defense. Jabril Cox, a little bit of a sneaky standout. I like that. That's good to see. It's what I'm like to see with OTAs, because it's all install at this stage. So for me, when I'm watching OTAs, you're not really looking for perfection at this stage because it's all trying to get used to and get into rhythm and everything.
Yeah.
You just what you're trying to what you're not hoping for is injuries, which we almost had with CD Lamb. Yeah, that was a bit of a scare. Yeah, definite. Yeah. And the other one as well, it's just no big negatives, and it doesn't seem to be. And my biggest, happiest takeaway from OTAs was in the offensive line. They put, and it's a big tell for me, this. They put the two Smiths on the left, Biadasz and Martin in Rosetta, and then Waletsko's playing on the right. But what that is a big tell for me is they believe that Terrence Steele is going to be their right tackle by doing that. Because if he's not going to be your right tackle for the year, what's the point in putting Smith on the left? You may as well just keep him on the right, keep him over there, just keep it going, keep it rolling, just leave him over there, get used to it, because he's left tackle. He's been playing left tackle. He did do right tackle last year, it was mixed results. But if you were doing that, you would just keep him on the right and just stay there, Smith. We'll tell you when we're ready. But the fact that they're doing it now, that to me is a very significant tell of that. What they're looking at, their projections, their target for when Steele comes back is going to be early, and he's going to be their right tackle.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, obviously, I followed Duke Manyweather on Instagram, and you saw Steele was starting to do moves with him sort of just in the build-up probably towards the draft. I think beginning he started working there. So that shows his recovery's on pace. By all accounts, he is ahead of schedule actually, and they reckon he will be good to go at the start of camp as well. Obviously you're hearing about other players like Jordan Lewis who's likely to start on PUP, but they're not saying anything about Terrence Steele. they're also still saying that they want to get Terence Steele signed to a long-term contract. So you wouldn't be doing that if you didn't think he was going to be ready for the start of the season.
True.
He was, if there was going to be any concerns about the injury, then, you wouldn't be looking at, you'd be willing to go with him for a prove-it year this year. But obviously, there's still a case of actually getting the deal signed. But again, it's positive that the front office are looking to deal with him as well. So
yeah. It's interesting. It's all good moves, and that's the one I'm looking at, because I made a tweet about how important everything on this team literally revolves around what happens at right tackle, and what happens at right tackle completely depends on Steele's health. And when you think about it, the whole thing is just domino. It's like a stack of cards, and if that goes wrong, the whole thing comes down, because now you've got to make all these changes to the offensive line. And yourself playing the position, that something as simple as the guy next to you can make huge differences on how you go about blocking, and it's little things, because you understand each other's body movement. You understand like a facial expression, or like, the body language can say it all to you. And you're just like, oh, right, this is what we're doing. And it's just these little tiny things that you're trying to do at the next level, where you're just like, when you make changes, it can disrupt the whole thing. And it's like a deck of cards, like I say, it all comes tumbling down.
Yeah, I mean, you almost have to have a sort of Spartan setup with them, where they eat together, they sleep together, not literally, but what I mean. And they live and breathe together, so that they know what everybody's doing. And it's it's with the offense, everything is so much about the non-verbals that
exactly.
wide receivers come to the line, they look at something, they look at Dak, they give a nod or something like that. You've got to have the exact same thing with the offensive line, but they can't. Once they're set, they can't move. So it really does have to be a case of being in sync with everybody. So
it's true.
And this is in some reason why we've seen different formations during all of the OTAs at the moment, and it won't be until training camp that we actually see who they are truly talking about going with. But it's still getting everybody a sense of who they're playing with, and getting an idea of creating that camaraderie and understanding with each other.
Yes. So yes, we will get to the offensive line. Hold on, in 2 weeks' time. So by then we should know a bit more about what's going on there. But this week we're going to be looking at the wide receivers, which is quite relevant, really, when you think about what's been going on over there. A lot of filler guys that were taking UDFA on the bottom of the draft this year. So that's going to be quite interesting. I think it's more interesting because of what it does to the guys who were trying to get jobs lower down, like your Dennis Houstons and your Dontario Drummonds. These guys are really going to push for because when you look at it, it's the way I'm looking at the wide receiver position is you've got your top three. We know who they are. Then there's your next three. And then there's like this group of guys below that. They're all trying to jostle for some sort of position. Because, I did the article on Blogging the Boys of the wide receiver position. And I know, I've got on there Kevontae Turpin as wide receiver 4. More than anything, that's because of snap counts. But when you actually look at it, I don't know. And we'll start with Turpin because it's an interesting starting point to go with. Is that I don't really see Turpin, in my opinion, with what's on the roster and what's further or potentially what could be on the roster. I would love to see it, but I don't see Turpin doing anything more than special teams.
I have to agree. I mean, I think, he will likely be sort of a sort of Lucky Whitehead character. I mean, you'll probably have him on for jet sweeps, and again, we were talking last week with the running backs that Juice Vaughn will open up the potential for the screen game. I think you could probably do that with Cavante Turpin as well. But
you could.
I mean, the one thing to note about Cavante Turpin this year is that, this is last year he basically played 18 months straight. He'd played in Europe,
that's right.
in the EFL, he'd played in the XFL, he'd played in the USFL as well. I think, he basically played non-stop. 4 leagues non-stop for 18 months and then joined the NFL. This year he's had an off season. He's been able to get practice. By all accounts, with the new rule change, there's potential
the
that,
kickoffs.
He's saying he's not going to be taking fair catches, but I'm sure there will be instances where it's a hell of a lot safer just to take the fair catch and have 75 yards than especially a couple. He muffed a couple of punt catches last year, so make the safe catch, go 75 yards instead of maybe lighting it up. And
I truly believe, when you look at it, right, Lorne, tell me what you think. Like, in terms of kickoffs, I think eventually it's just going to be a thing of the past, the way that it's going. When you look at the evolution of it all, from the flying wedge, all the way down to what it's now become, and then they bring in a rule change of fair catch is now 25 yards. So 5 yards makes a difference, and then they do these new rules on the kickoffs. I think the kickoffs are going to be a thing of the past.
I think you're probably right. I think they are eventually going to go that way, and I mean that is where most injuries do occur. But you only have to think about who was it? It was Jeff Heath hitting Lockett a few years
back. Right, in the back.
Obviously he then the scary scenes where he was out cold for a couple of minutes and took about 3 weeks to start walking again. That was certainly concerning, but at the same time, it's another avenue where players don't, obviously the players that fill up the bottom end of your roster, they're normally the ones that are your special teamers.
Yeah.
And if you're taking away special teams, it's a lot harder for them because they need to actually prove what they can do in the specific drills that they need to do for their actual position. So they need to be able to
evolve them. Yeah.
They need to develop and actually be ready to play at a moment's notice in the game, rather than just being a core special teamer. So
and especially when you think of like the defensive players, like your linebackers, for instance, that's a good way, or cornerbacks. It's just a good way to prove yourself that you're an able tackler. You can get in there quickly. Those positions most definitely. It's not. I know. It kind of can for the offensive players, but I see where you're going with it. It's field experience, in front of the crowd with the lights on and the cameras on you, all that feel of pressure.
Yeah.
But that is personally how I feel about Turpin. I mean, there is a way, if you kind of like squint hard enough and you look at it, you think there could be like some sort of like screenplay or like an extended handoff, like you say, or a jet sweep that he comes in. But I just think that Turpin has his role. It's solidified. There are players that we're going to talk about that could be good returners too, but he's proven himself already last year. He's proven that he can do the job. He's got the role. Really, it's not for him to be worse than the guy below him to lose his job. It's for somebody else to be better. At this stage, it's just that's your guy. That's his role. And why, like in the NFL, when you've got yourself a specific role, you don't want to put more on their plate and lose the one thing that makes them special. Because the one thing that makes Turpin at the moment special is punt returns. He is good at it. There's no arguing that. Do you want to put more snaps on offense and take away then that special ability? And I think that's what the Cowboys are going to try in, or what they're going to look to really keep Turpin at, in that sense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the other aspect to look at as well is that, he was a training camp addition.
Yeah.
Whether Kellen Moore wanted him in or not, we've had a whole off season this year, and obviously the offense has been changing to this Texas Coast offense as
Texas
it's now been
Coast.
branded. You know, they've had a whole off season to actually come up with plays where you could actually factor in a smaller guy like this, and you got Brandon Cooks as well, who's a small guy.
Yeah.
So, the offense is obviously going to be set up for these smaller guys, and maybe that's maybe they can have a little niche with Kevontae Turpin, but it just remains to be seen. As you say, I think primarily it'll be the kick return, the punt return, and maybe 5 snaps a game or something like that. Just
maybe,
decoy if nothing else as
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. Minus Turpin, right? Because I think that's your special teams guy. That he's on your final 53 regardless, right? How many, and like I say, discount Turpin from this count, how many wide receivers do you think the Cowboys are going to take on?
Right. So I think you're probably going to try and have 6 receivers this year.
So Turpin would be your 7th.
No, okay. So yeah, probably 5 receivers then, because I think Turpin technically is your 6th guy.
Is your 6th.
So I'm looking at obviously the top 3 of Cooks, Gallup, and CD Lamb, and then I think Tolbert's there, Simi Fehoko and Brooks, I think, are the other 2 are vying for the other 2. I mean, Simi Fehoko needs to actually, he has a great camp. He has a great camp. He does little bits in the preseason games that kind of make you think he's ready to jump on the scene.
Yeah.
You're hearing all the hype at the moment where they're talking. Dak saying that Simi's ready to take the Cedric Wilson leap, but we haven't really seen. We haven't even Cedric Wilson at least contributed the first couple of years.
Yeah. Because when you look at Fehoko, it's nothing. It's not even like you go, oh, there's some special teams, but it's like that's the thing. It's some. You can't even say there's a lot.
Yep. So, and as I say, Brooks. I mean, Brooks again. You've been hearing that he's been making the catches that obviously have the scouting department obviously had scouted him well and before the draft because nobody else seemed to have scouted him. I mean, he wasn't listed on Dane's list. You hadn't seen anything. The draft show itself, they were having to scout on the fly. Beamer actually managed to have some of the tape ready so that they could actually look at it in the room while they were talking about it. So
I mean, because go on. Sorry, continue.
No. So I mean, we don't know what's going there, but I mean, obviously, again, it's Mike McCarthy likes the people that are drafting. They're always looking to get cheaper and younger wherever possible. And I think you're seeing it around the league. Obviously today you're hearing that the Vikings are about to part ways with Alvin Cook.
Yeah.
They're obviously they've got a younger guy in Mattison coming on, and it's a way of getting cheaper, and looking at getting him out, getting Cook out the way as well. So, the NFL really does stand for not for long.
They're very true. Very true. But just a quick shout out to all our fellow Ukis bringing in the comments. Loving them so far. Some very, very intelligent comments. I don't know why all of a sudden everyone's gone so highbrow. Chuck in some what we're used to around here. But let's start off then, right? First, we'll go in order. We'll touch back on. We won't need to touch on Turpin. We might dip back into Fehoko. But let's start at the very top with wide receiver 1, CD Lamb. I'm wearing CD Lamb appropriately. It's the wide receiver position. So I thought, I'll try and match everything up. Look coordinated for a change. Here's a crazy one for you, right? I don't know where the time has gone, but this is his 4th year in the NFL.
Yes. I
Where
mean,
did that go?
I don't know. I think because obviously, he initially came in with the Amari Cooper thing, and literally the whole question, it's been his show this last year where, he was asked to step up and be that number one receiver. I think he was able to sort of glide through the first 2 years. Don't get me wrong, he was a contributor, and he's got better each year, but the last year is the first year where everything was focused on him. So this is why it's sort of come so quickly, and it was only around about draft time when they said they've activated their 5th year option, and you're thinking, wait a minute, is that really the end of his 3rd season already? So as you say, it's gone really quickly. So
flown by. But I mean, like when you look at it, it was like a very weird season last year for CD, and much in part of it, like a lot of people keep comparing Lamb with Jefferson, and I think it's still a bit weird because I had comments last week while I was on holiday, and they were like saying, "Look, is CD Lamb? Do you consider it a bust when you think we could have had Jefferson?" It's like, well, no, because CD Lamb still finished last season with 4 games without his starting quarterback and finished 5th amongst wide receivers in yards. And a bunch of other statistics too. And you're like, that's not bad. You can't consider a top 5 wide receiver a bust just because the number 1 receiver was available to you. Like, to me, it does not matter. As long as you strike on it, doesn't matter who's 1st or 5th or whatever. And here is, like, for me, the most notable thing is that he still had 67 first downs and over 1,100 yards with a month without Dak, without his starting quarterback. And the backup quarterback, Cooper Rush, we know the arm talent isn't quite there. So he still managed to put up some crazy numbers. To me, I think as long as he has his quarterback, and we know him and Dak do have a fairly good connection together. There's quite good chemistry there. I think as long as those to stay the same, then it's going to work out fine. I think he's going to have, because a lot of comments, if you remember the start of last season, Lorne, was, is CD Lamb a wide receiver 1? Like, if he is, would you consider him a low-end wide receiver 1? Was a lot of the comments. And to me, I was just like, no, he is, regardless. Just wait. And we get to see it. Do you consider him now as a wide receiver 1? I'm not saying you said it, but do you consider him a wide receiver 1? And is he a top end wide receiver 1?
I certainly think he's a top end wide receiver 1. I mean, the whole question again, because we were getting rid of Amari Cooper last year. The whole question was that, in the first 2 years, you talked that Amari was 1A, Gallup was 1B.
True.
CD Lamb was 1C, or whatever order you had them in. But you then had, obviously, you had Gallup coming off an injury. You had question marks about whether he would be ready, and whether he, obviously there was something that was, whether it was mental or whether there was something physical, because he did have a clean-up surgery, but Gallup wasn't up to scratch last year. So the pressure really was on CD Lamb. And, we started the season with Dak's guy, Dennis Houston, being on the roster as well. And, and there was chopping and changing with that. You then had 4 weeks where Cooper Rush was the quarterback, and he was hooking up with Noah Brown, because obviously they had the rapport from playing with the twos. So it took a while for CD Lamb to get started. Now the comparisons with Justin Jefferson. I mean, you could put Justin Jefferson into this offense, and would he be as effective in this offense? Would CD Lamb be as effective in the Minnesota offense? It really is difficult to
It's impossible to say. Yeah,
it's apples and apples. You know, it's how do you compare that? But
agree.
CeeDee Lamb, towards that end of the season, he was, you know, he was getting double teamed, he was getting triple teamed, he was still actually making catches, and you know, getting space, getting in, getting touchdowns, and you know, being a big weapon for this offense. And if nothing else, opening it up for other people as well. The tight ends, everything focused on what CeeDee Lamb was able to do. So CeeDee Lamb has developed every single year, and I don't see him coming to the top of his curve yet. I can see
I'm the same. Yeah.
Another year of expansion, and you know, he's going to earn every penny of whatever contract Jerry lays in front of him, and you know, gets bartered for. So,
well, I mean, this is his last year. Talking of his contract, where he's earning single digits in the $1 million figure. Next year, I think it goes to 17, and then after that, whatever they decide to do. So this is really it now. The final of his pure rookie contract. But I think the biggest factor, I think, for CeeDee Lamb that's going for him, when you look at it, we'll talk about Brandon Cooks and Mike Gallup in more detail now. But I think what the best thing that's happened now with Brandon Cooks and Michael Gallup is, for me, okay, both can have elements to their game where they can play in the slot. But for me, both Gallup and Brooks are outside receivers. They play on the fringe, on the outside.
Yep. That's
where they're best. That means that you could put CeeDee Lamb back at what he was best at, is his natural position, which is in the slot. Now think about what you can do with that, with a burner on the outside, physical guy on the other side, and Lamb in the slot. I think that is going to go so much further for Lamb this year, because what you find, like, Lamb does have abilities to go down and catch the deep ball. We've seen it. You can see it. He's able to do it. He's able to run those intermediate routes. But where Lamb is best is on those short breaking routes where you could just throw him the ball quickly, get the ball to him as quick as you can, and then just let him go. Let him be the playmaker with the ball in his hands, as opposed to trying to win on routes. Because when you do that, the results are enormous. The best place to do that from? The slot. So that's why he fits so well. He becomes that big slot guy. And when you think about how they're going to go with this Texas Coast offense, I think that is the biggest enablers, as well, which is an even bigger factor, I think, which is quite helpful for Lamb, is that offensive coordinator is different now.
Yeah, and I think the whole thing as well, that you know, all these plays, again, the criticism of Kellen Moore was there was a lot of stop plays for receivers, so curls, hooks, all that sort of thing.
Too many option routes.
CeeDee Lamb is best. Go back to that New England game, the catch in overtime where caught it over the middle, coming out the slot, broke away from his receiver, and then waved him bye-bye as he went into the end zone. That's CeeDee Lamb at his best. That's what you want CeeDee Lamb doing, and that's what you'll get with this West Coast offense. You'll get the receivers running the ball and getting into space, and it's all about yak. And CeeDee Lamb is a yak receiver more than he is he's a possession receiver. He will make the tough catches, but you know, get him the ball and let him do his work, and
just go for it. Yeah.
Oklahoma's offense, when he was there, I mean, he was primarily running all over the field, catch the short pass and run it into the end zone. So this is going back to his, you know, how effective he was back in college. This should be bringing him into the pros with that as well. So.
Yeah. And a testament to how good he is with the ball in his hands, they had him on punt returns.
Yep.
Because they knew, catch the ball, just let him go. But let's move on to the next guy, Brandon Cooks, because this for me is really exciting. I have been saying all draft season, look, the Cowboys, what they need to do is they need to go get, you know, like Tank Dell, something like that. Somebody who's a downfield burner, who's going to go down straight. That's just what it's missing You could say there's still a missing, which we'll get into on wide receiver 4 position, if you like. There's something missing still, but regardless, they filled the biggest void. Brandon Cooks, for me, I call it the pinch of salt, or, like what I've said before, is he's like the MSG of the wide receiver core, where because he's this downfield threat that has to be accounted for, you've got to put maybe not so much shell coverage, but you still need to have somebody bracketing that threat. By doing that, what you're doing is you're reducing focus on other things, which means Gallup and Lamb are the biggest beneficiaries of that. That's why I like Brandon Cooks. And 10 years of playing, decade now, right? Came into the league very, very young as well. But going through it, when you look at his skill set, the type of wide receiver he is, and the biggest thing going for him is, for me, his injury history. There is like hardly any of it. There's spats, but nothing where you're like, ooh, nothing's going to hinder him. And I think that's the biggest thing. And we're already hearing in OTAs that him and Dak are connecting. Everybody's loving what they're seeing. They're loving like the bang nine, the big routes, the 9 routes, posts, corners. He's doing them already, and they're striking, and it's making a difference. And like they're saying that the breaks and the releases in his routes are just phenomenal. Like he just gets it.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, obviously, having somebody who has that veteran presence, has been on 2 Super Bowl playing teams as well, knows what it takes to get there, knows, has the experience, but is still young enough. I mean, he's the right side of 30 at the moment. So, from that point of view, it's fantastic. And it should allow him to, carve a niche in this. It's almost like the, Randall Cobb signing that we had a few years ago, where, it was a weapon that actually had defenses worried about Randall Cobb. And I mean, Randall Cobb is still in this league. Obviously, he's back together with Aaron Rodgers and up in New York Jets. But, it's by developing a position and actually getting there, and allowing the other guys to actually focus on what they're doing and not asking them to be a jack of all trades. You are actually going to get a combined benefit. You're going to get what Cooks can bring, but it's also a weapon that's making this defense is back to the sort of pick your poison. So by having both CD Lamb and Cooks doing one thing and the other, you then got to still remember that Gallup's there as well. You've got to worry about who else is on the field, the tight ends, whatever.
Yeah.
And this is only going to open up the factors on this offense. So.
Yeah, I'm like the 2 moves that they made on either side of the ball. Really loved this one. And I made a comment that what it is with Cooks is that he's spent nearly the entirety of his game, nearly all, trying to be a wide receiver 1. Teams have paid him to be a wide receiver 1. This is the problem they've got now at Houston. Yep. Houston are paying part of his salary to play in Dallas, because teams do overpay for him, because he is. But the issue is that he's not really a wide receiver 1. He's an elite right at the very top as a wide receiver 2. The good news is he's coming to Dallas, where he doesn't have to worry about being the wide receiver 1, because that's Lamb's job. He's coming in here to be, he's being the straw that stirs the drink, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. Or, he is the making everybody else better. And I think it's going to definitely help Lamb for sure. Most definitely, though, on the other side, which is a nice segue, is it helps Michael Gallup. I know people are worried about Michael Gallup. To me, though, I feel in some parts when a player comes back, and it goes the same with Jabril Cox, I'll fight his corner on this, that all players will say, you come back off an ACL injury, you might be medically able to play. You're fit to play. It doesn't mean that you're at the level that you were pre-ACL able to play. Like, that takes at least another year, because it's not just the fatigue and the injury, it's the mental aspect of it all as well, and getting back into rhythm. Because one of the things that was clear, I think, from Gallup is there was in some parts a loss of his athletic ability, but what was really big, what was most notable, I think, for me, was that he just was kind of like just a step out of sync. Like, you see lots of things like Dak would throw him a high ball, and Lamb would go and jump up and try and high point the ball, but he's completely mistimed the jump. So he's catching the ball as he's coming back down, and he's just like little things like that are just like little cues where he's just a step out of time. Do you know what I mean? He's just ever so half a step out of where he needs to be. Good news is he's going to be completely clear of the ACL injury, and we're moving on. He's got time to develop. He's got time to build chemistry and a rapport again with Dak. And he can get back into the flow of it all. And I think that's the biggest thing going for Gallup this year. What do you think?
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, it's very rare that any player, if they've had a devastating injury like that, they return the next year and they hit the ground running. I mean, you mentally, you're worried about cutting, and you're worried about, can you re-injure it, because obviously you look at the wide receiver that everybody was wanting us to sign this off season, who is gone and signed up north, and he's earning 15 million on a knee that basically has gone twice in his career. And not every injury heals exactly the same. So you always come back. You saw it with Dak, where when Dak broke his foot, and the gruesome injury he had, it's taken him a couple of years to actually start running the ball again effectively. You see it across the board, as you say, Jabril Cox. I mean, he had that injury as well, and it's another example. Gallup, by all accounts, the spring's back in his step. He's not thinking about things. So it's just getting down to going back out there and remembering what you love about this game, and doing what you need to do to be effective. And that's what's happening. That's what we are seeing in this off season. The OTAs, the chemistry's there with Dak, and it's just a case of get this new offense on board. And I'm sure by training camp we'll be seeing the amazing catches that he was putting up a couple of years ago.
Well, yeah. Yep. I mean, look at the catch he made where he tore his ACL. Phenomenal catch.
There's very few people, if you pop up in the air and your knee's already popped, that you carry on and make the catch as well. He still made that catch there, and got the touchdown as well. So
exactly. And I mean, like, when you think of Gallup too, I call him Des Bryant Jr. When you think of the style of play, he's not as elite as Des Bryant. I'm not saying that by any means, but quick off the snap, physical with the ball, physical with cornerbacks, getting up there. When he's got the ball in his hands, he's trucking guys over. That's Michael Gallup. That's how I see it. He's just that just lesser version of Des Bryant. And you think an ACL injury, I mean, look, Des Bryant gets an injury. What do the Cowboys do? They cut him because he's obviously at that age and he's moving on. But anyway, digressing. When you look at Gallup, he's got this athletic ability. You take that away. Same with Jabril Cox. You take that away from an injury, it's going to affect them initially for an injury like that for a year. But we'll see how it goes. Like you say, everyone keeps using the word springy. He's using the word springy, and you just used the word springy. So we're saying that he's getting his springy back.
Yep. And the best thing that Michael Gallup does as well is he can, you think that you've got him hemmed in against the sideline. Mm-hmm. He'll go up and he'll make a Lynn Swan style catch, much like the
back shoulder fade.
When Des Bryant was there, we had Terrence Williams, and Terrence Williams always seemed to manage to come up with the ball, get both feet down, and you're like, how the hell did he catch that? Then he'd go out and alligator arm something in the middle of the field, and you're going, oh God. But Gallup has flashes of that as well. But if you saw him at his best in the Rams game last year, where Dak had thrown that deep fade down the sideline, and he came up and made that catch. Unfortunately, as we say, he didn't have it the rest of the season. Mentally there was something that was just holding him back. And then I think the whole thing as well of the Cooper rush for 4 weeks, and then Dak as well. And Dak was off, and when he came back, or he was under pressure. He was under pressure to sort of show that he was the guy, because already the rumblings had started that we should have Cooper Rush as number 1 and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, which never made sense.
No. So I think Gallup's going to hit the ground running this year. I think this offense, for all the talk is that we're going to ground and pound it. I mean, Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is slightly a step above Dak Prescott at the moment, but Aaron Rodgers was never the Green Bay offense. How many times during its heyday was you coming off and Aaron Rodgers is thrown for 6 touchdowns this week or whatever. So this wide receiver core it's going to be a strong wide receiver core, and I think passing it's certainly going to be up there in this league.
Yeah, and when you think about it, what they've done in the off season, you could say with the loss of Ezekiel Elliott, the running back position has gone slightly down in talent, where the wide receiver position has gone up. So, completely going along with everything that's flowing with the idea of this Texas coast offense. And all those ideas going along with it. But you mentioned the player earlier. Let's get to him then. So I know we're discounting Turpin because we spoke about him first, more as the special teams guy. Jalen Tolbert then. Now, I've had many a discussion, some of which have turned into arguments on Twitter over Jalen Tolbert. He's, for all of its worth at the moment, people are saying, he's looking great. He's looking good in OTAs. We'll get to that in a second. Things are all on the up for Jalen Tolbert. My issue is A, it's OTAs. It's install work. Take everything, like especially see with that, with a slight pinch of salt. As long as the athletic ability and things that are happening snappy and fast and crisp, that's good. The issue I got, it's not even the 3 targets last year that he got. It was that when he got the chance, when they said, go out there and do something, Tolbert was just completely like you can't say being offside, lining up offside on a snap. You can't say that that's the coach's fault. It's not. You're the guy lining up there. You got to know where you need to be. You can't say it's the coach's fault when you're running the wrong route, or that you're in the complete wrong space, or you're occupying an area where a wide receiver already is. Those aren't coaches' problems. They're a player's problem.
Yeah.
So you have to think, how far down was his development coming in? Because, South Alabama, fair enough. You could say there's going to be issues of the level that he played at playing there. But, how much of a role can he carve? In order to be, where people are expecting Tolbert to be, and you think of where he was last season, this jump has to be huge. Yeah. And that's my argument I've had. I'm like, okay, I get it. But this jump that you're saying he's going to make, that's a monumental jump. That's massive. That's not something it's like an NFL record type jump to do that. The impact that you'll have, you kind of have to just wait for a moment and wait and see. What's your take on Jalen Tolbert, Lon? I know there's a few comments coming in on him. But what's your take on him, and how do you foresee how he's going to impact the offense this year?
I think that obviously the main thing to look at as well, obviously he was a draft pick last year, came in, OTAs. He was there for the beginning of OTAs. Then he came down with, I think it was a hamstring injury or something like that. Yeah. That then meant that, you know, you scale things back. You almost go into taking the mental reps as you hear about, but the mental reps when you're a rookie trying to develop yourself in this league and develop the chemistry with a QB that you've literally spoken to on the telephone once or twice, that has an effect. And then you go off for a month like the players are about to do. They're about to get 6 weeks off before they go and report to training camp. You know,
never get that.
He's rehabbing. You know, Dak will have gone off, and you know, Dak's a big star now, so Dak's filming commercials for things. You know, the Real White Housewives of Dallas and all that sort of thing that you saw last year. So you don't develop that chemistry there. You get to training camp, and you're going through the install. You're going through everything in one period, and I think, you know, mentally, if you're not ready for that jump, because I mean, a pro style offensive playbook is pages and pages more than anything that you've had at any college, even at Alabama. You know, you're still add another 50 pages onto that sort of thing. So, you know, you're asking for, you know, a big leap from anybody anyway, especially if they're not coming in at a number one round draft pick level.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's where it was, and I think he just hit that wall, and just nothing he could do separated himself. He never was on the same page with anybody. You know, and you know, I don't think, you know, it wasn't a case of him messing around in training or anything like that.
No. Yeah,
he was trying his best. It was just a case that, you know, he was at his limit last year. Now
it is a lot to take on. I agree.
Yeah, and again, you know, the initial years of Noah Brown and Cedric Wilson, you saw very little out of them.
Yeah,
You maybe saw a few flashes in training camp, but you very rarely saw them in a game. Noah Brown in a game normally meant that he was that Des Bryant style of body. So, you know, it was normally much like Devon Street as well. When we had Devon Street, it was a case
I remember that one.
You know, there's a run coming here, and you know, he's on to block. And it was only a couple of years after that that Noah Brown developed, Cedric Wilson developed. I think this is what you're going to see as well. But with everything else, I think he really needs to make the most, actually get on the field and show the coaches that they have faith in him. It was a mulligan last year. You've got this this year. But I think he really needs to show out this camp. I think, you know, again, where we're in some positions, we're saying that, you know, year 2 is still okay. Year 3 is when you really need to show it.
That's where you're going to be. Who you're going to be. Yeah.
I think he needs to show something this year to allow him to get to year 3. Otherwise, he's going to be a sort of Kelvin Joseph, you know, on the roster bubble for year 3.
Obviously, Joseph has the higher draft pick, so he's got a high value. Yeah. But sure, I know what you're saying in terms of like questions being asked there. I do think that in some ways, when you think like they lost Amari Cooper last year to Cleveland, there was obviously the Michael Gallup thing coming on. So you had Noah Brown who's coming in, and everybody's kind of rolling their eyes like, oh, geez, here we go. And I think there was perhaps maybe too much pressure put on. I'm you know, I will stand up for him as well as talk about his negatives. That was there too much pressure on a rookie wide receiver like that, where they just like, we've got a lot of eggs in your basket right now, Tolbert. We need you to be the guy. And I wonder if maybe that just kind of cracked a bit too much. You know, just too much on his plate with everything else, that they were trying to make him be more of the guy than what he was ready to be. So I think there's a bit of that. And then he gets lost in the shuffle with the commotion of the season when they lose Dak and everything else. So, you know, Tolbert kind of goes by the wayside in terms of what the coaches were perhaps trying to do. So it may have been a bit of that. But I totally agree with you that you wait till year 3 and what's there is there. That's your 3rd year. If it's not really developing or moving on, look to go past it and to move on to the next guy. And the next guy, obviously, you've already mentioned as well, Simi Fehoko. Massive Cowboys fan. You cannot deny the love for the game. The issue is the guy just hasn't had a chance to play any snaps for Cowboys. Last year played 79 snaps, which included special team snaps. When you think there's like 60 snaps a game, it's just like there's nothing. Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, I like what Simi has. And even come in when they drafted him, watched the tape, loved it. The size, the speed, the height, those 50-50 balls are not 50-50 balls with Simi Fehoko. He's going to snag these. And he's a big guy to try and take down. But it's just like you think of the other wide receivers that are on this roster. You look at what's there, and you look at what Simi's lack of what he's done so far. You kind of just have to worry about how much longer he's got before they're going to give up on this. I don't want them to, because I think he does have something to offer. And, we've got another jump ball specialist in the UDFA department that could work out. But that's what Simi could do. He gives you something different that all the other wide receivers don't have. But it just seems to be that he's lacking in the refinement of where they expect him to be. Not just even at this stage, like just generally.
I think the big thing about Simi Fehoko is obviously he came from Stanford, wasn't it?
Stanford.
Stanford. Wide receivers at Stanford run 3 patterns.
Yeah.
Post, fly, and post corner.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of intricacy in the footwork on that.
There's no movement either.
Yeah. When you step up to the NFL and you're asked to run a 5-yard slant, you better make your cut at 4 yards and are ready there for the 5, catching the ball at 5 yards. And you've got to be. There's got to be no wasted motion in that. And I think that was a criticism of him coming out of college was his footwork. And I think by all accounts, again, he knows that this is put up or shut up year. He's been working with Dak in the Dak yard this season. By all accounts, again, and yes, we are in hype season at the moment, but by all accounts, his footwork is a hell of a lot crisper this year. Now, does that translate when you get into a game, you're tired, you're play number 56 of the game or something like that? Are you still running them as crisp as you have been play 1? Are you still willing to make the catch over the middle with somebody bearing down on you? That's what we need to see. But he needs to get on the field more than the 60 plays that you're talking about for special teams and whatever. If you think with all the turnover that we had last year, where you didn't have Gallup for 5 games, you were swapping receivers around. Dennis Houston took up a roster spot. You had other people coming in, and you weren't seeing anything from Simi Fehoko. Was hardly on the field. That is concerning that he didn't show it last year. He's where we're talking about the pressure being on for Tolbert. I think the pressure is magnified for Simi Fehoko this year. And if he shows something in training camp, but not enough for this coaching staff, it's another potential trade bait for bringing in somebody that you do need to bolster another position if need be.
Yeah. I'm in agreement with you there. It'd just be sad because his love for Dallas is just there. You know it, So it would be sad because you'd never want to hurt someone's dreams, but this is the way it goes. But you did mention a name, and we'll talk about him because Lubarski did ask about him too. Is Dennis Houston? So obviously, my little write up on Houston is that Houston's biggest plus positive from last season was one of, there was two parts going for him. One was that the Cowboys just needed him. They needed this wide receiver. He flashed in preseason. He flashed in camp. The biggest thing that was going for him, though, was this chemistry that he had with Dak. Both of them, it was immediate. They were both together on the same page, and they could read and understand each other. Dak gets lost very early week 1 against the Bucs with a thumb injury. Dennis Houston's biggest plus is then taken away from him. So then he just falls into obscurity. There's no, because they did try to bring him in, but there was nothing there. I think he caught maybe one pass, I believe, or he got one target.
I think certainly what little numbers he had in week 1, they dropped off in week 2,
even more so. Yeah.
And then he was off the roster week 3. He was back on the practice squad.
Yeah. Have you heard anything of him at this stage?
Again, he's been working with Dak. I mean, he's obviously taken a play out of Drew Pearson's playbook where, Drew Pearson, when he came out as a undrafted free agent, he went and got in with Roger Staubach, and the rest was history. Again, he's doing everything he can to work with that during the offseason, keep that chemistry there. But so far, I haven't seen anything showing up too much in the write-ups. I suppose, in some respects, it's no news is good news. If he was dropping everything, then you'd hear about that from the writers. But he's not making spectacular catches that are.
I just think
the praise for him as well. So.
Yeah, I just think, and we'll talk about what they've done in this draft cycle as well with some guys. I just think that last season he was a product of like a lack of wide receivers that we had, and it was just like, oh, this guy is like flashing the best. So you just wonder, like, this season, was it just because he flashed on a team that was lacking wide receiver depth that we were just like, oh wow, we were enamored by just what little he did, just looked a lot. But this year there's a lot more depth there, and the talent is fairly good. Somebody, and you spoke about him at the start of the show, Jalen Brooks, that they took with the final pick.
Yeah.
Now we've spoken about day 3 picks by Dallas all the time. And, there's round 6 and round 7 guys, Noah Brown, a good example, that just seem to stick around. Like, Dallas refused to let these guys go. They love to keep them around. And Jalen Brooks, I think, I've watched a little bit more tape on him. There's not much, because he didn't play all that much because he kept transferring.
Yeah.
So, he plays at South Carolina for the last year. He does a little bit, not much, but does a little bit. But the bits that you do see all seem to be that he's this. And I was trying to remember his name. His name keeps escaping me. Fantastic wide receiver. Played for the Bears for a little bit. Was really good at jump balls.
Oh.
He reminds me of him.
Yeah, I know. Again.
Yeah, the name's on the tip of my tongue. I could have Googled it, but I just could not be bothered. I was like, I think it began with J, maybe. It did begin with J. Anyway, so he reminds me a little bit of that. And when you think what that could present in the red zone is very interesting. So I think Jalen Brooks is one of those guys. Now, if he does enough and Simi Fehoko is still behind, that's your takeover right there.
Yep.
That's the surprise takeover. That, Brooks could be the guy. He could be like last year's Houston, funnily enough, where he'll flash a lot in training camp, will flash early, and then kind of fizzle out a little bit. But that, you can't expect wonders from every player. but it's a start for what you're about to see, and then he's going to develop from there. That's what I'm thinking with Jalen Brooks. What's your feelings on him, though?
I mean, the pressure's on or I think the pressure's off. I think some way that the Cowboys will try and keep him on this roster in some way if they can. They have done with previously with the last three years worth of draft picks. It's and what they've learned from Tolbert, they'll transition that as well. They'll try and scheme things so that they make the most of the education process for Brooks as well. Because again, it's effectively because he's moved around all the time. It's been it's almost like being at a small school. So again, it's that teaching progress. Alternatively, because he's moved around all the time, he's picked up playbooks and sort of been able to integrate himself into that offense.
Yeah.
So that maybe gives him an advantage as well. But it's up to him to at least get himself into special teams and get himself on that way, get himself on the roster there. And again, this is what I'm saying, that by them eliminating the kicking game, you're eliminating the opportunity
possibilities
for these guys, to get themselves a roster spot.
I agree.
Purely on the special teams, and then develop their practice habits during the week to get themselves into the offense as well. Now it's a case of really you need to develop and be able to play on offense so that you're called on at any point in time. I think you're probably looking practice squad for him this year, unless he really lights it up in camp. But we need to see, to be honest.
It's special teams, like you say, is the possibility. And I mean, it's the same as well with Dontario Drummond, and David Durden is the other guy as well. That these guys, they've got good ability. They flash, but it's going to be special teams and they need to be really good on special teams for them to want to carry them, because obviously they're not going to carry all these guys. Some of them are going to go. But I mean, Lebarski's asking a good question, that if Dak had stayed, would he have been more in rotation? And that connection, does that underestimate his position on the roster this year? It's tricky. What makes Houston such a tricky projection is that he doesn't really stand out in any other particular department other than he's really good at being read by Dak. Like Dak and him both are on the same. They completely know where they need to be. Unless like he can do more in his athletic terms to get up there, the other guys are just overtaking him at the moment. I don't think it's a case of underestimating his roster position. It's like you need you some like we've seen. If Dak isn't there, there's nothing really available to you on the offense that Houston can provide.
Yep.
And I know that's like saying, oh, well, what are you expecting Dak not to be on? Are you expecting to be injured again this year? But what I'm saying is that's the biggest tell, is that they need to be able to do more than one thing, especially when you're this far down on the roster.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. It's difficult for him. He just needs to get his head down and get ready to go as quickly as possible. So to make any impact this year.
It's possible he's made a start. He's had an entire season to work with the coaches, and there is something there as a base that they want to work with, that they want to build on other than the chemistry. So you don't know at this stage until we see it more at camp and in preseason games. Like with the installs at this stage at OTAs, it's just really difficult to say this is going to be the definitive plan at wide receiver. Because the only other guy I'm quite happy on, I think has a chance, is Jalen Moreno Cropper. I think more than anything, as just a pure slot guy at this stage, anyway. Very high on my rankings in terms of UDFA players. Is it possible? I think he makes the practice squad. Like, he's this type of guy that makes the practice squad. And, like, there's that one game where, I don't know, one of the wide receivers is, like, not 100% right. And they're like, all right, bring Cropper up just to cover ourselves. Like, he gets called up on these practice squad rules. And they call him up, and he's just there as a safety blanket for one of those games. Maybe takes a couple of snaps on one of them, but he's there. Do you know what I mean? I think that's how I foresee Cropper this season, and then he, development from there. Then,
yeah, I think with Cropper, you're probably looking at him probably taking somebody like Dontario Drummond's place on the practice squad.
Higher on the order, yeah.
You're constantly churning the practice squad, and I think we've invested money in Cropper as well. I think we've given him some guaranteed money, which suggests that obviously we've got interest in him as well. So that, even though you release him at the end of the year, that's you basically saying, I've given you 180,000, stick with us, and you'll still get the whatever it is that you get for being on the practice squad nowadays. So you've set it up so that he's going to make something. In fact, we're paying him. We gave him a $10,000 signing bonus, and we've guaranteed him 140,000. So that suggests that if he doesn't go off and sign with somebody else, he is going to be a practice squad. And you're sort of saying, well, look, you're making more with us than going off and being on somebody's roster. So
that's it. Yes, but any of the wide receivers you want to talk about, or are you quite happy there?
I think I'm quite happy there. I think when you get below these guys, then you're, unless these guys are, the league's biggest secret, then it's practice squad or bust for them. So
yeah, I did actually do in the off season for blogging about. I did like all these guys, especially UDFA guys, scouting reports on them, and some of them can be hard to watch.
Yeah.
One of them we'll talk about next week on the tight end side. But yeah, interesting one from DJ Dog though. Special teams been diminished. Does that mean CJ Goodwin in trouble? I don't think so. He's still special teams ace because you still need him for punt coverage. That's what he's.
I don't think so until they remove punt team. Then you've got question marks. But I mean, CJ Goodwin, if nothing else, we're, as I say, Kevontae Turpin's come out and said he's not fair catching for anything. That means that our special teams are still going to be there. Fassel, obviously, I think to a man, every single special teams coach in this league said they didn't want this rule brought in. It's the owners that brought the rule in and voted it through. I think you'll still see special teams being a big factor this year until the next change that's made. So, and CJ Goodwin, he's produced to date. I think it's fair to say that he will still have a roster position this year. He's effectively yeah. I mean, again, compare him to somebody, you're probably talking Bill Bates from the 90s teams. That
how dare you bring your name up like that?
Yep.
But yeah. I mean, there's still, until they get rid of punts, you still need special teams. It's just that I think this is the first stage. Well, it's not the first stage. We've gone through the first stage. We're into like the mid stages now of slowly getting rid of kickoffs. And, other leagues have done other interesting ideas. Chase the turkey and all that they call it on XFL. But there's all different versions where they can change things up now. So, yeah, wait and see really on that one. But hit me with it, Lorne, and we can get out of here.
Right, okay, so obviously we're about to go into the quiet period, but this is when most people are actually planning where they're going. So if you're planning on going to a game this year, book with Cowboys Experience for the ultimate meet and greet, stadium tours, game tickets, tailgating, much more. Obviously get to meet guys like Micah Parsons, Ed Too Tall Jones, Drew Pearson, Randy White, Kenny the Shark Gant, Zach Martin, all of that. And of course, if you book with the discount code UK Cowboys, what do you get?
Free stuff.
Yep.
And obviously as well, make sure, tied in with that, you take a look at the UK Cowboys travel package that we put together. A group of us going out. Just take a look, see if you fancy it. If you do, ask us some questions. Lorne, finish us off then and we can get it.
Yep. And then, of course, check out all of these guys here. Obviously, you've got the in-house Dallas Cowboys broadcast. You've got Blogging the Boys with our very own World's Team podcast handled by Meg Murray and Paul Stewart. You got Pick Six Sports, CF Cowboys fans only. Skywalker Steel, KT's Fun Tweets, Jeff Reinbold Show. Jeff's obviously a bit busy at the moment. Kicking off tonight in Hamilton.
That's
right. You've got all sorts here that we have. Obviously we've had Mike Tagg recently, Cowboys Cave on YouTube. We're constantly adding to this list of Ring of Honor guests. So.
I know we're gonna have to. We're definitely gonna have to look to add and change some of those up for season 5. But yes, guys, that is it for this week. Next week we will be looking at the tight end position, so it's a bit easier. Wide receivers, you kind of got to try and blast through because there's so many of them. So yeah, we'll have a bit of fun with the tight ends. We've got a special guest as well for next week, so keep tuned in with that. But as always, I'd like to thank everybody who joined us, comments, questions, all the rest of it. You guys, the Yukis at home, you are the MVPs of the show. And I'm giving Lorne the last shout, and we'll get out of here. Go for it, Lorne.
Right. Okay, well, as I would normally say, have a good week, and I'll catch you next week. And as Paul would normally say, Dallas forever, Philly for never.